What is up, everyone? This is Joeingram1. I post as Chicago Joey on the 2+2 poker forums, and I am here with my first YouTube video in quite a long time, and also the inaugural version of my new podcast. And what we're going to be doing here, probably, I'm going to try to make it a weekly type of thing, is I'm going to be going over some hands that are posted each week on 2+2 in the high stakes thread, as you can see right here, February 2014. And basically, I'm going to pick out between 8 to 10 hands each week and talk about them a bit more. Give a little, I've wanted to do a podcast like this for a long time, about a year actually. It started out in my head as a strategy type of podcast, like a old Bart Hansen cash plays, deuce plays, where he used to just talk for 45 minutes about different hands. Sometimes he had guests. And it originally started as that in my head, but if anybody read a blog post I wrote about a few weeks ago about giving away poker strategy in terms of, when people are making videos and they're telling people how they play, how they're beating 25-50 or 10-20. I haven't really ever been, I just didn't want to, I didn't want to do that. I've had a chance to make videos in the past, I've chose not to, and that's not what I wanted the podcast to be. And about a week ago, I came up with this idea that, everybody loves high stakes hands. They love going to the thread. They love, they love seeing these hands. And there's probably a lot of people out there that are, they love PLO, but they don't really know what they're doing. Like, they're reading a hand, they have a vague idea of what's going on, but they're just not quite sure what's going on. And I decided that I think this might be a fun thing to do. I think, this is going to be geared towards the guys that are casual fans of poker, casual fans of PLO, small stakes guys that are still, progressing in the game. They're not professional poker players yet, but they maybe have aspirations. They just love hearing about PLO, and they love hearing about PLO being discussed on some type of level. So I'm sure there's going to be some guys, in the high stakes threads that will enjoy this on an entertaining type of level. But ultimately, if you're looking for some type of high level strategy talk, this probably won't be it. This is going to be more of an entertaining, somewhat just discussing hands type of thing, and we'll see how that goes. So the format I'm going to try to go with here, I want to do a podcast originally, but when you're talking PLO hands, it's really hard to actually break down a hand, but you have to just say all the cards, just say everything. You have to keep describing what people have. So it's just a lot easier for you to actually see the cards during the hands as they're being discussed. So, I'm going to try this for right now, and, we're going to see how it goes. So I'll be posting weekly updates on my Twitter at Joeingram1. I'm sure people in the high stakes thread will post links to this each week, as I think it'll be something that's kind of popular. Yeah, so why don't we get into it? I got some notes over here. I'm just looking. Oh yeah, I guess a lot of people out there probably might not have any idea who I am. Since I've been living in the United States for the past 10 months, I've been playing poker for about 6 or 7 years. I've been playing PLO for the past 4 or 5 years. I worked my way up. I started out posting on 2+2 in the micro stakes full ring forum long ago, and I kind of worked my way up the 2+2 ecosystem, I guess you could say. I've done 4 or 5 prop bets that were pretty popular. I played 50,000 hands in a day at no limit. I played 600,000 hands in a month at no limit. I played 500,000 hands of PLO in a month. No one's ever going to do that again. No one ever been close to doing that. That wasn't very fun, but it kind of catapulted me to becoming a high stakes regular. Yeah, I played, roughly 4 million hands online PLO, and I played everywhere up to 5,100. I played some 100, 200. I kind of right now I'm living in the United States, and I've kind of settled into just 2-4, 5-5, 3-6, 5-10, 5-10, 10-10. Those are kind of my main games that I play right now. And but I'm pretty familiar, very familiar with a majority of the current high stakes regulars on PokerStars. All these hands are going to be from PokerStars. And I have a lot of friends. Some of my friends are gonna send me hands that they play that are kind of interesting. I'm sure after some people watch this, they might be railing the games, because a lot of people just enjoy railing the action on stars, and they might see some interesting hands that aren't posted that they want to send me. So go ahead, feel free, send me any hands. We'll talk about the most interesting hands. And looking at my notes again, and I guess a little bit why I want to do the podcast. Yeah, I think I kind of touched on that a bit before, but ultimately I want people to listen to this podcast, get to know PLO a bit better, and hopefully you decide you want to start playing some PLO, or you want to start playing more PLO. My wish, I love PLO. PLO, I fucking love the game. I love it so much. I love playing. It's given me my whole entire life essentially. And my goal is for every single person in the world to be playing PLO. Obviously, that'd be a great thing for me, as the amount of bad players would kind of pile up. But either way, I just want to put something out there that people can take in, and everyone. There's so many fans of poker that just love listening to poker being discussed. So hopefully this will be something you guys like. And yeah, so we'll get into the action. We got some hands from Jungleman, Hillary, Zygmunt, Tally Star, a few Bum Hunter on Bum Hunter Violence, and Team Barcode this week. So getting to the first hand right here. And it's interesting. PokerStars just made a change about a month ago where they made all of 5100 Zoom, which I love. I love this change. I wish it was like this before. I'd be a millionaire right now, because my biggest thing was I'd play 16 tables, 5, 10, 10, 20, 25, 50, 50, 100. Every game running, I would just play. I didn't care. And that's bad. Don't do that. Or do that if you want to lose money. Don't do that if you like money. So Zoom I love because, with the nature of the games now, I'm sure everyone talks about it. There's seating scripts, there's, buttoning where people, steal the last button, the fish breaks, or the fish bust, everyone sets out right away. It's like a mad dad. You're like, sit out, sit out, sit out, sit out. You know what I mean? Like, it's fucking ridiculous in a way to some that are just viewing it. There's so many people, that post, they're like, why don't you just play? Why don't you guys play? These guys don't play poker. They probably don't play poker for a living. They don't quite understand that, the first time this happens to you, you're like, okay. The 100th time you get button, you're like, dude, fuck this guy. Like, this is retarded. I'm going to do this myself. So, at some point, it becomes kind of common, and it's really hard to break that trend. So, Zoom is in action now, and I've been, had the lobby open for a bit. I talked to some of my friends to kind of gauge the reaction and how it's been, and it seems like it's been pretty positive. Obviously, there's the whole rat holing issue, which I don't have too much of an opinion about right now, because I can understand why PokerStars would want to keep people in action. Like, if you have to sit out for 30 minutes, you might just not play anymore of the game, and then some regulars aren't playing, and then so I can understand why PokerStars would not be talking about this right now. But I think it's really good, and I hope it's something. They just introduced it at 2550, and I'm really curious to see if 5100 will still run. And I'm also very curious to see the impact it'll have overall in the games. I enjoy it. I think it'll be a great thing. So we'll just get into the first hand right here. Now that I've talked for 8 minutes and 10 seconds, just introducing the podcast, who I am, and first hand right here. This is kind of cool because we got a interesting lineup that you normally would never have ever seen it at a 5100 table ever. You got two bum hunters, Sira and Belitos. Actually, my professional railer friend told me that Belitos isn't as much of a bum hunter, but he's got 47 big blinds here. So I'm going to go with what I've always thought about him, which he's a bum hunter. And I actually just found this out yesterday that Wizzo apparently is a tournament player, and I've had him labeled as a near, like, on my system of identifying fish recreational players. We'll think of something to call them over the course of this podcast, but I've always had him labeled as a pretty big fish at PLO, and I think I still remember he is. Maybe he's not. I'm not sure, but he's in this lineup right here, and I think everything pre-flop here in this hand's pretty standard. Steerman raises the button. Jungleman 3-bets double suited hand from the small blind, and Sierra calls. So the flop, I think the flop is kind of an interesting spot, because it's a spot in Jungleman's position, Wookiees, where you're always going to see that when you flop a pair and the second that flush draw. And Sierra has a hand that he has top pair, but the problem with his hand is that you never really improve on any turn card beyond a queen or an ace that isn't a diamond, and a 4. But the problem ends up being is that from the hands I've kind of looked over it seems like Jungleman's a fairly aggressive player, and a lot of blank turn cards I would expect him to continue betting, and then you're in a spot where you have top pair. You don't really have any backdoor flush draws. You don't have any backdoors essentially, but you have a backdoor quad draw, which is cool. Backdoor full house draw. We won't talk about those every hand. I love those draws. But so, Sarah calls, and I think that's debatable. On the turn, I think it's the more interesting spot because Jungle Man picks up a gutter and he goes ahead and pots again, which I think is totally fine. And Sarah's in a position where he has top pair, he still has top pair, top kicker, and a gutter. And I'm sure Jungle Man is fairly an aggressive player. His range is pretty wide, but at the same time, this is normally a spot when I was playing kind of bad. I might have called or gone all in. I mean, I don't know. There's some merit for calling, I suppose, but I thought about this hand because I did a practice podcast and looked over some of these hands, and I don't know. I don't think calling's the best play because I'm not sure what his plan was on a diamond or a club, or I mean I don't know. I don't know if he's going to turn his hand into a bluff on some cards. If he just wants to get it to showdown. If he thinks Jungle Man's going to check the river enough to call the turn, but yeah, Jungle Man goes ahead and checks the Jack of Hearts river, and Sarah takes it down, and that's the first hand I have lined up here. I thought it's a kind of a cool hand in that I think Sarah played it wrong, but get us started there. So this next hand we have it's between the legend Zygmunt, who I don't know, makes some questionable plays. I don't know. I'm not sure what he's thinking. I think he just rolls the dice when he's playing and he's on drugs or something. And this is what happens. Hands like this happen. And between Tallystar, who he must make a lot of money at tournaments. That's all I know because whenever I played a lot with him, and I mean, he must be doing well at tournaments and live. I don't know live play. I'm not, or he's in makeup, or he knows a billionaire who stakes him. I'm not quite sure, but some people might disagree with that assessment of him, but whatever. And also we got Team Barcode here. Team Barcode. You're never really sure which guy's playing on Barcode. In my mind, it's a number between 2 and 10. The number of people that are playing on that account, depending on the time of the day. It looks like it was the afternoon, so I'm guessing, maybe it was the guy that runs the restaurant back in Maryland, kind of, he was on break and he was just, wanting to play some 5100 while he's waiting for the customers, because 4 o'clock is kind of a slow time at a restaurant, typically. So Barco 3 bets, and Hillary and Tally call with. Hillary's called preflop in position, cold calling the 3 bet with a double suited hand, semi-connected. Whatever, roll the dice. That's what happened. Tallystar called. Yes, seems fine. The flop. Tallystar bets half pot with top pair, a gutter, and some other overs for better 2 pair. I don't know. I don't know what he's doing. Hillary calls. He's got 2 backdoor flush draws and a gutter. Now, whatever, man. I think he chose the worst option in the hand. I think if he wanted to put more money in the pot on the flop, he probably should have considered betting the flop. And if he wanted to put more money in after Tally bets, he might have considered raising the flop, because I think he has some fold equity when Tally bets that size. And on the turn, Hillary picks up one of the best cards in the deck, the King of Clubs, giving him a nut flush draw and bottom pair, so you got to jam it in. And he goes all in. I think in Tally's position, he's probably really confused what Hillary could have. He probably expects Hillary to go all in with any sort of king-queen combo on the flop. He probably expects him to show up with like a 5, 7, 8 type of hand, a half pair plus a gutter that might have picked up a flush draw. So I think his call is all-in call. I think it seems fine, and Hillary wins the hand. LOL. He's the best. He's the best. Maybe we're all wrong and Hillary's right. So all right, next hand here. We have between 2 of the best, 2 of the bum hunters, the bum hunter Balitos and the bum hunter Serar Alaziz. And it looks like Bolitos opens the button. Sierra makes a standard call. Some people might 3-bet ace jack 9-9 with ace high diamonds, but he chooses to call. And I think this hand is interesting. I chose this hand because it's a spot that happens fairly often in 6-max PLO, where you raise, make a c-bet, and you get check raised on a flop, a 9-7-2 type of flop. It's a flop that people have different. I'm not going to talk too much about ranges when I do this, but people are check raising different types of hands in spots like this, and that's kind of the fun part when you're playing, is you figure out which players are capable of including which ranges in when they check raise in a spot like this. So Bolitos c-bets with bottom 2 pair and backdoor flush draw, which it's something that you could c-bet or check, and Sierra check raises with top set. Easy game, top set. How can you play top set wrong, right? So he raises, Bolitos calls, and the turn is a backdoor flush draw and a gutter for Bolitos, and Sierra chooses to bet again. And now, I think this is the interesting spot of the hand, is that in Bolitos' position, I think he has a hand that he could call with, or he could also go all in with, because I'd probably go all in, because I would expect that he has some fold equity in the spot, and he actually sometimes gets it in a head with the bottom 2 pair against like a queen 10-10 jack type of hand that might have picked up a club flush draw too. So in that case, he's doing really, really well against him. But he decides to call, and the king comes down the river, and Sierra goes all in. And at that point, in Bolito's spot, when he has the blockers to bottom set, middle set, and essentially Sierra is representing pocket nines, some type of pocket king or king 9. So Bolitos calls, which I think's fine, and Sierra wins the hand. So our next hand here is between Tali and Bolitos. Again, a little blind on blind warfare. So Bolitos opens with a, I guess that's fine at 5,100, that deep. I would expect Tali to be defending his big blind a lot. So I'm not, I would think about more what type of range I'd want to be opening against a certain type of player, depending on, what their post flop tendencies are. But Bolitos opens Jack 10, 8, 6, one suit. Tali Star makes a pretty standard defend with a little low rundown on my favorite hand, 4, 5, 6, 8. If you have 4, 5, 6, 8, pro tip out there, put it in. 3-bet it. 3-bet as much as you want. I'm actually surprised Tali didn't 3-bet the hand here. 3-bet it. Get it. Call 4 bets. Try to get it in, because the hand's my fucking favorite hand. I love the hand so much. So Bolitos c-bets, top 2 pair, and Tali's in a position where, where he calls. I think, I guess that's okay. There's definitely merit to folding. There's merit to, maybe you can't fold when you flop a backdoor 8 high flush draw and a backdoor bad straight draw. That actually ends up making the second nut straight on some boards when the 2, 3, 6 comes. But yeah, I don't think that's a super interesting spot. I think the more interesting spot is on the turn. Bolitos goes ahead and bet, and as you can see, they're about the start of the hand, 64 big blinds effectively, and at this point, Bolitos has about 4K left. So yeah, I think that's right. I have to do quick math, 4,300, whatever, and 40 something hundred, 42. Whatever. And Tali's in a position where he picks up the backdoor straight draw. So I know what I want to say about the hand, but I'll try to think what I want to say right now about the hand. So I guess Tali's in a position where he thinks he could bluff river cards, which is obviously what happened in this hand, but he's in a position where he's not necessarily playing to hit, make a straight. He's playing with the intention to bluff, I guess, a number of different rivers. Maybe some clubs. If he makes 2 pair, he probably just wants to show it down. Well, I guess if he makes 2 pair a lot, he actually has a straight, so never mind. But yeah, his call is questionable. I don't know what I guess it'd be close. Depends what kind of mood I'm in. But I guess this is what happens when you call this flop sometimes, is that, in a spot like this, I think, okay. River, Jack of Hearts, and Bolitos turns 3 pair. top 2 pair, 3 pair, whatever you want to call it, and I think his check's good. He doesn't block anything really, and he probably expects Tolly to have a straight draw combo of some sort, and Tolly goes ahead and bets, and Belikos calls. Now, with that said, what does he expect Tolly to turn into a bluff on the river? Some type of 10x with clubs that picked up clubs. So I guess he expects Tolly to show up with a club draw often enough to call, but even if a lot of his club draws, I think, end up having straights at this point, and I don't expect him to turn a hand like Jack 8 into a bluff, which might be a hand he'd have, so, or even a hand like pocket queens with clubs, I guess. He might think Tolly bets a lot of his 3-bets king preflop, so I don't know about the call. I think it's kind of bad, but sometimes you just gotta click call, and you gotta pray to God. So next hand we got here is Hillary's in this hand. Oh. So Belikos opens under the gun. Hillary 3-bets in for middle position. They both have pretty good hands. 2 double suited rundowns, 1 single suited rundown, and we got an interesting flop here. Interesting in that Hillary decides to check back his king high flush draw and gutter, and now I think you should be checking back some spots, checking back with some hands and some spots. I'm not sure if I agree with this one, but as played, he chooses to check back, and Belikos decides to pot the turn when the 5 hits, which, there's definitely some, you could debate him betting pot here. You could also decide to bet a smaller amount. You could decide to bet pot. He has an unflush draw and top pair and a gutter. So I would probably expect Hillary to end up folding here often, but I guess he's trying to get him to fold out a hand like king. But I think he folds king a lot here. So he bets pot though, and Hillary calls with the gutter and the king high flush draw. And then on the river comes the ace, which, Hillary's obviously Hillary here is representing like he has some sort of aces with the nut flush draw himself, potentially, that he checked back the flop with for unknown reason. And then he called the turn, and then he decided to bluff the river, which I think is fine, but he decides to bet pot in Hillary fashion, and Belikos makes the fairly normal call. Now, obviously, Belikos spot you're calling, but in Hillary's spot, I think it's a spot where he always has to bet, but you could definitely debate the sizing that he chooses. Pot. The really joy is betting pot, though, so yeah, let's go on. That's the end of that hand. Belikos wins, and we're done. And this next hand was one of the weirdest hands of the week, played this week. Two Morgoth, a short stack kind of scummy guy, little scummy regular type of guy, scummy for whatever reasons. Don't want to talk about that. And Sira, who's Sira ended up. And this hand, let's see what happens here. Morgoth min raises the button, seems fine. Sira 3-bets. I wonder if I'm saying Sira's name right. Sira Al-Aziz. Sira Al-Aziz. How else could you say it? Sira Al-Aziz. Morgoth. Yeah, if I'm not pronouncing these names right, whatever, it's fine. So Sira 3-bets. Morgoth calls. Standard. I think, yeah. And this is where the hand takes a turn for the YOLO town. This is our YOLO hand of the week, brought to you by YOLO. You only live once, so live it up. Sira goes ahead and flops nothing, gutter, and he bets half pot. Morgoth decides to call with his club, queen of clubs blocker, intending obviously to bluff the hand at some point in time. On the turn, he gets his chance. Sira checks. Morgoth bets 800 to 2850, and Sira decides to call, which I'm sure they have some sort of dynamic where when he chooses that size on the flop, he's going to expect to get floated. you know, some percentage of the time. And Morgoth in his spot, you know, he's leveraging his stack in a way, but also, you know, even if they're 100 big blinds deep, you know, there's some merit to making this play. But yeah, I'll just say that about the hand. And so Morgoth bets 800. Sarah decides to call. The river is the jack of clubs, and I guess when Sarah makes two pair, he has the nuts. So Morgoth decides to bluff his hand, which, you know, I guess he thinks Sarah is going to check call the turn and check fold the river at a semi decentish percentage of the time that to make this play work well. I guess, you know, he probably needs to be betting the river with some bluffs as well too. So this, you know, probably the hand that was posted that, you know, obviously we're only getting a 10-hand sample of some of these players. So, you know, there's so many other dynamics that go into play. There's so many hands. I'm sure these guys have played, you know, tens of thousands of hands together. So, you know, they've been in the spot a lot. And I'm sure Morgoth has, you know, showed up with bluffs here fairly often as well, where Sarah thinks that he can get away with check call on the turn and then deciding to check call this river. But, you know, YOLO, let's go. Next hand we got up here is between Joeingram1, one of the only Americans still doing it here on PokerStars, and Weak Force. Weak Force is a guy, he's been playing kind of a long time. You know, I obviously I only really see PLO hands. I'm not actually sure if some of these guys he's a tournament player or something like that. But I played a lot of PLO with him over the lifetime too. He's a pretty aggressive player. Yeah, you know, I don't think I played too much 25-50 with him. I feel like I played a lot of mid-stakes with him too. But yeah, so this cool hand. They're 178 big blinds deep. This actually is a pretty cool hand. So odds and opens under the gun, the odds and the legend, and everyone calls for the most part. The flop, Joeingram1 decides to lead out with a gut shot and a nut flush draw, which makes cool. And Weak Force calls with overpair and queen high flush draw, which I think is fine. On the turn, Joeingram1 running like God is normal. I heard he might be down money this year. I don't remember him ever running bad, so, you know, just remember him nuts every fucking time. That fucking guy, the nuts every fucking time, man. But whatever. So he turns the nuts, standard for him, and he bets. Weak Force has a blocker and gutter, and makes a call. I think his call's okay. I think his hand is hard to play on some rivers when Joeingram1 bluffs again for him to make a profitable call. But I guess he suspects that Joeingram1 has some Jack X combos with like a nut flush draw type of hand. People lead here, they usually have a nut flush draw for the most part. So this is where the hand gets cool. Joeingram1, God, he runs so fucking good. It's so sick. He runs so good. Like this hand doesn't show up on the EV, you know, but this is just a standard Joeingram1 situation. So he decides to bet he bets the river, and Weak Force turns top set. So I see merit for why he thinks he can raise when he has the blocker. You know, blockers are essentially, when you have a blocker, you essentially have the hand, right? So we'll get into blockers. Blockers going to be a theme for these next few hands, so I put them in a row. So Joeingram1, he runs so fucking good. So from Weak Force's spot, I suppose he expects Joeingram1 to call him with a hand like Jack with a Jack 10 type of hand, that a set that has a blocker. So when he bets the turn, Joeingram1 bets the turn, Weak Force probably thinks that he would raise all of his straights in that spot. Therefore, he never has a straight. Therefore, his range is sort of capped in a way on the turn, but I think he has straights in his range, but he might be thinking that he doesn't have any straights in his range when he just calls the turn. So he expects Joeinram1 to probably bet Jack 7-7, which I would expect him to bet those hands in this spot. So he probably thinks that there is some value in the race here, which I think is debatable. I think that he's going to have the straight decent enough percentage of the time, and you're risking, I mean, 100 some more big blinds for the most part. And I think Karamat probably does call. He probably calls with, I mean, it's debatable. He might call with a set with a blocker. He might call with a set with no blockers. I don't know. Interesting spot for sure. So not quite sure I would have jammed the river because Karaman always has it. And as we see, Karaman has it. Boom. There you go. Ship another 18,000 to the kid. Good job. I'm proud of him, man. You know, holding it down for the, the Americans guys these days. Some of us relocated eventually. You know, we kind of came back to the United States. For me, I was living in Vancouver, I living in Sydney, and then I came back home and I met a girl and she's finishing school. So she said, "Do you want to be with me?" I said, "Don't say this in the future, guys." I said yes. So I moved for a woman for the second time. That's how I ended up living in Sydney. I met a girl in Europe and she lived in Sydney. She said, "Do you want to move to Sydney?" I felt that YOLO spirit come inside of me. I said yes. And yeah, but like I said, Karamat, he's holding it down for the Americans, him, Ben, Phil. So yeah, I'm always happy to see him win, I like him. He seems like a pretty cool guy. And yeah, so next hand here, we have these next three hands are going to be, this hand's not that interesting really, but it's a common theme of blockers gone mad, blockers gone crazy. You have a blocker, you go crazy sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't work. Often it does work though, so I encourage you, if you have a blocker, go nuts. Fucking put it in. Get them to fold. Maximize that fold equity. So weak force raises, and Bolitos 3-bets double suited kings. Pretty normal, 130 big blinds effective. Weak force calls, and the flop. Weak force flops the nuts with backdoor flush draw. Bolitos flops the blockers, the nuts, and he decides to bet. Weak force can raise here, but I think a call is pretty cool. So he calls. Bolitos bets the turn again, and weak force turns a flush draw as well. And I guess I think this kind of relates in a way to the previous hand. It shows that he's capable of flatting the straight here in some spots, which obviously the hand before, when Karamat bet the turn and weak force just called, so he's I think when players at this level, they're capable of having a straight in spots like that and a spot like this as well. So, when you think about this spot is, should he raise or should he call? What's the merit in both? If he raises, what does he expect Bolitos to get in with? Does he expect Bolito? He has the blockers to the 10. Maybe he thinks that Bolitos might have the king blockers and do this as well. He might have a set combo. He might have a 10 blocker with pick up diamonds or something like that. I think the turn call is, I think it's obviously a pretty opponent dependent situation and what you think the opponent tendencies to do on the river with what part of his range, but we don't want to get too much into that right now. So he calls. Bolitos hits the 8 comes on the river, which doesn't really change much, but it does make, if weak force had a hand like Queen 10, Jack something with like a pair and a straight draw type of hand, he has a straight now. So I'd probably expect. I would think he would call with a straight at this point if he made a straight on the river. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy that likes to fold, but so Bolitos jams and weak force calls, and I think that's sometimes what you need to do in the spot. You want to be able to bluff in the spot, so that way when you do have the nuts, you do get called by Queen 10 here, knowing that the other person can bluff. And I think, as I said, at this point, these guys have played a lot of hands together where, they're aware that everyone's pretty good at these stakes, so everyone can bluff in a lot of spots, which is, what makes these guys pretty good. And this hand, let's see, this hand first. Oh, we'll go this hand first. All right, so this is between a fish, recreational. What do you want to call him? I'll call him a fish. K. Evan, I feel like he's like a live player who must have like rich parents or a good job or something. But I think I've seen him chat before, and I don't know. There's a small chance he might be a winning live player. I don't know. I can't see it. I play a lot with him. I can't see him being a winning player. He's terrible in a lot of spots. But obviously, he might disagree with that assessment of him. And if he does, who doesn't? Who really thinks they're bad at poker? Everyone thinks they're good. You ever met some? mean, you guys have all done this. You tell someone you play poker sometimes, right? They're like, well, let me tell you this. In my home game, I win all the time. I swear to God, I've heard that 15 times this past month. I've talked to people at the gym. I started talking when I play basketball at the gym. I just started having conversations with people because it's like, it's the fun thing to do when you live in the suburbs. You go basketball. I play basketball. 28 years old, I play basketball. But it's kind of fun. I'm getting pretty good at it. But anyways, you talk to people. They're like, oh, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I play poker. They're like, oh, man, I play poker too. I was like, oh, tell me more, bro. Like, let's hear more about how you play poker. And they tell you they play poker. I'm the best in my home game. Whenever me and my friends play, I always win. I've had so many good players in their home game. Like they're like these are the sickest fucking guys ever. They just win money. But I kind of this is when I think about K Heaven. It's like some guy who you'd be at the gym and he's like, I'm amazing. I make so much money at online poker. I play online PLO. I play 25-50. I'm so fucking good. But that's for the hand played. So Sat Leet, he's been around for a long time. Plays a lot of high stakes, no limit. He's played some PLO. I'm not quite sure what I think about his PLO game. I have an idea in my mind. I don't think he's super good, but if you play high stakes, aren't you good? Why else would you play high stakes? Not because you have the money to play, right? So he's good. So Sat 3 bets, K Heaven calls with 10-10-5-8. Probably fine. No one really, at these stakes, no one really folds 3 bets in position, no matter what you have. Literally any 4 cards people just call, which is actually not too different than lower stakes. So he calls, and it's getting 38 minutes. Try to wrap it up here at 45-minute mark. Sat 3 bets, C bets with top and bottom and 2 blockers to a straight. And I think this is the interesting part of the hand. K Heaven can probably just raise with his blockers right here and take advantage of the full equity he has right now, or he can decide to risk his whole stack at some point in time with the blockers, which is what ends up happening. So Sat goes ahead and bets the turn when they both turn a flush draw, and at this point, I would expect Sat to give up. I'm pretty sure he doesn't think K Heaven's a good enough player to ever call it a straight here, never have a straight. Like he probably has a hand like a 10, like a pair with a straight draw. He thinks he probably would always raise a straight, which he might not. So K Heaven turns the 10 eye flush draw. I got to put more money in here. I'd probably fold at this point in time in the hand. But some people, when they call the flop, they want to use their blockers. You have to use your blockers. You have blockers, you have to use them. So he calls, and the river is the 6, and Sat makes a fun check. Although from his standpoint, I don't know, when K Heaven bets, does he expect K Heaven to turn a pair and a straight draw and a missed flush draw into a bluff? Or does he expect him to turn a pair and a straight draw without a flush draw into a bluff? I guess he essentially has little respect probably for K Heaven's game, so he just expects him to have some weird fucking hand, which is, kind of what he had. He had a weird hand. And he went ahead and called, and he won the hand. And let's get into the last one real quick here. I don't want to talk too long in this first podcast. So Curtains 126. I'm not really sure who this is. I've never seen him before. I don't know if he's a reg or a fish. Probably a reg of some sort, but yeah, I'm not sure. So he opens the button with double suited hand and weak force 3 bets, which is fine. They're about 150 big blinds deep. Weak force flops a 9 high flush draw, and Curtains flops a gutter and bottom 2. So weak force C bet. Obviously this is a good hand for the 3 better. He C bets, Curtains calls. The turn essential blank, and from this is a I think weak force can bet again here. He chooses to check, which I think is perfectly fine. And Curtains can bet here, but checking back seems okay as well. The river chicken dinner. So weak force decides to bluff here. I'm guessing he thinks he's representing king some percentage of the time, and he also thinks he's representing jack 10. Ace king. So those are his value hands. I think he bets ace king on the turn, so I don't think he has ace king ever. So essentially jack 10 and king for the most part really here when he bets this river. And I don't know if it's a good bet on his part. I get, yeah, there are probably some hands that curtains will fold here. That, yeah, I think his bet's fine. He bets, curtains raises. Kind of a cool size. He raises, I'm not a professional math person sometimes. I just can't think. 1650-ish. And now Weak Force decides to have to lean over to C, but he decides to YOLO it up and push it in here, and Curtains has 3,300 left. So I mean, I don't know what hands Curtains would have that he would feel like he has to bluff here, though. If he had some sort of blocker with Jack, 10, 10, I would have guessed he has some sort of pair or two pair with it that he could just call with. I don't think he would turn some hands into bluffs here that he could just call with. So I don't know what Weak Force is doing. I don't know what he's doing. I think he made a very terrible play. But as we've seen from some of these hands, and like I said about him before, he's kind of a regular-ish player, but he's not a grinder, a everyday in and out grinder of these games. So he's going to be making some plays that other players wouldn't make, and obviously this is one of the plays. So yeah, I mean those are our 10 hands we have for this week, and I want to do a bonus segment each week. I guess it won't be a bonus segment if I do it each week; it'll just be a normal thing. But do a throwback hand of the week. Now this will either be a hand from my database or it'll be a hand I find in high stakes database. It'll be some cool old PLO hands that were in these massive pots, and we'll just talk about it. We'll just talk about it for a little bit. So this is actually going to be one of my hands I played because it's really funny. And please don't judge me from this hand because I could show you. Let's see, I have these hands right here. Yeah, that's the hand we're gonna do. I mean, I could show you this hand where I had aces and put a hand versus sauce, but I didn't want to show the hand. This hand's much more interesting. So it's with the legend Julia753, one of the most legendary PokerStars player of all time. Of all time. If you don't know about Julia, God, I feel like Julia was a robot programmed by PokerStars to give money. Julie's not a real person. Whoever it is, girl, guy, I assume was always just some drunk Russian woman, Chakta-ko, Sadako. I don't know, the Russians talk. They're just like, I don't know, that sounded kind of worship-ish, but I imagine Julia is like a blind Russian woman who loves drugs, loves doing drugs, it's just on hallucinogens constantly. And plays poker on some people like to do hallucinogens. They like to have sex with women. Some people do hallucinogens. They like to dance. Some people do hallucinogens and they drink. They get drunk. They like to play poker. What are you guys thinking? Come on, man. Don't do drugs and play poker. There's so much more fun things you could be doing on drugs. Let's be honest. Not that I would know. So now you've been looking at the hand like, what the fuck is going on? So I have Queen 9, 5, 10. This is a 25-50 deep game. And we have a few bum hunters. Sappy bum hunter, LUFC. He was ruggish at this point. 5 WHQ only came out when Julia played. Rue is terrible. Maybe not terrible, but that. So Julia's in the blind, and I want to play every single pot with her I possibly can. And I might have been on chill at this point. But I think, I don't hate it. I literally want to play every hand with Julia. So I open Queen 9, 5, 10, 3 clubs. I advise you always open this hand. I open it 5 HQ flats and Julia 3 bets. And now I put 175 in the pot. I'm not fucking folding when I put 175 in the pot normally. So I call. And I flop the nuts. I flop top pair. So Julia checks, and I decide to bet with my top pair and some backdoor flush draws and some 2-pair draws and some backdoor. Do I have a backdoor straight flush draw? No, I don't have a backdoor straight flush draw. I got a backdoor quad draw. I like to play my backdoor quad draws typically when I flop them though. So Julia check calls. When Julia check calls, here literally she has any 4 cards. We're gonna call her hurt for the sake of the video, and there'll be a lot of Julia hands. It'll be fun. But for the sake of the video, I miss when people said that when you watch these training videos and be like, "I just make a terrible." Well, for the sake of the video, we're just gonna call her, and then they make a terrible play. I loved it. It was so fun. This is a for sake of the video hand. So Julia check calls. Now I'm excited. I got top pair. I'm winning a lot of money, hopefully. So you know, $9,000 potentially win. That's a lot of, I think at this time, March 24th, this time I played this hand, I was very much getting into shopping. I was on a pretty big upswing, and I started going shopping a lot, buying these clothes that are fancy, going on dates, you know, take a girl on a date, woman on a date, whatever, you know, dress nice, get some steak, bring her back home. And so yeah, so the turn's an ace, and you know, obviously I don't want to see an ace, but I expect Julia to show up here with like a 4 and like a 6, 7, 8, just like some weird fucking hands that have a pair and like jacks, Jack 10, Jack 10 2. Like that's the hand I would expect Julia to check call here with. So the ace, I mean, I'm not really worried about too much. So Julia checks, I check back. River gets interesting. Julia, oh, spoiler alert, don't look. All right, saw it already. It's okay. Julia pots the 8, and now I'm like, I snap, call. Definitely not folding at a pair. So, I mean, I expect Julia to just show up here with, like I said, the most random hands ever. Like, I'm so excited right now. I'm not only probably going to break the table, but I get to ship the money. How much clothes you buy for 9K? For fuck's sake, man. So, I call, and Julia shows a hand I totally expect her to show up with. Obviously, I play a lot with Julia at this point, so I have a fairly good understanding of the ranges she shows up with in certain spots. So she calls. I win a $16,000, $491 pot, and USD pot too. Not even a Canadian pot, a USD pot, which I love USD. Or can you see? Oh, there we can. Yeah, I love USD. I love USD hands. I love USD. I hate Canadian hands. I really hate Australian hands. But yeah, that's it. I think that's all the hands we have this week. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and post this. I'm gonna probably watch it, see how it turns out. You know, I'm sure I talk too fast in some instances. I'm sure I don't enunciate my words correctly sometimes. I say things that are inappropriate all the time. But that's, you know, that's kind of what makes me in a way, is, you know, how I act in some situations, which I can live with. But I hope you guys found this some type of entertaining on some type of level. Maybe you learned something. Maybe you learned nothing. Maybe you think I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe you think I'm an idiot. And you have probably have a lot of merit in thinking those things. So. But yeah, you know, we'll see how this goes. I'll probably do another one. There's going to be one person that likes this, so I'm just going to make another one. It's pretty fun. It gives me something to do to break up the monotony of my day-to-day grind that I, you know, wake up, cook, yoga, keyboard, piano, dance, workout. It, you know, it breaks up that whole grind, poker. So yeah, guys, you know, give me your feedback, any suggestions, maybe any suggestion on format you have. You know, like I said, follow me on Twitter. I'll be posting updates. Joeingram1, my blog on Liquid Poker. I post, you know, I'm starting to post more on there right now. And yeah, that's all we got. You know, thanks for watching. See you guys next week.